हाँ सर। Namo Namaha, and a very good evening to all of you. On the occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, that is celebrating the 75th anniversary of India's independence, we have launched the Center for Hindu Philosophical Studies. As a part of launching this center, we organize a seminar on different aspects of Hinduism. And now today, we are in the last plenary session of the seminar. We have with us two speakers. One is Dr. Kenneth Valpe, and the second speaker is His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Dr. Kenneth Valpe has already joined, and let me take this opportunity to introduce him to all of you. Dr. Kenneth Valpe is a research fellow of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies and a fellow of the Oxford Center for Animal Ethics, OCAE. As the former, he directs the Bhagavata Purana research project with Professor Ravi M. Gupta. Together, they have published 2 volumes on the Bhagavata with Columbia University Press. As a fellow of the OCAE, Valpe has published Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics in the Palgrave Macmillan Animal Ethics book series. He has taught at the University of Florida and Chinese University of Hong Kong and has lectured widely on Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition and thought since 1962. So we have such an eminent personality, and it will be a pleasure for all of us and an enriching experience to listen to Dr. Kenneth Valpe. Over to you, Dr. Valpe.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Madhavi Narsalai. And thank you for inviting me to take part in this conference. And my thanks to all of you, the August Assembly, for this opportunity. I would like to show a PowerPoint, if it's possible. If I can share screen, will that be?
Yes, you can share screen. You are a co-host now, so you can share yours.
Yes, thank you so much. So we go here. Okay. Oops. Well, it just disappeared. Let me start over. Oh, this is very strange. I'm sorry. Thought I had all the technology set up and ready to go, but this is often how these things. Okay. I hope you can. Are you able to see this?
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Okay, good. So I've called this presentation "Warning Signs: Eco-Semiotics in the Bhagavata Purana," and I want to explain a little what I mean by that. So let's see if we can do this. Yeah. So this is my aim in this presentation. As I understand, I have, about 25 minutes now, so we're just giving a sketch of these ideas. So I want to explore some of the Bhagavata Purana's presentations of nature, and here the focus will be on narratives more so than theology and philosophy explicitly, in order to locate the text's broad, what I'm calling semiotic approach to the physical environment. in order to show how the message of the Bhagavatam may contribute to what I'm calling attitudinal changes toward effective human care for the Earth's biosphere. And the first question may be, what is meant by semiotics? Essentially, it's the study of signs, much more broadly than simply linguistic signs. A sign is anything that communicates something, usually a meaning to the interpreter of the sign. And then we have a study called eco-semiotics, and
Sorry,
I'm
your
quoting
PPT
here.
hasn't begun, sir.
Sorry?
Just your PowerPoint presentation is not visible. Just the desktop is visible.
Oh, I was told that it was visible.
No, I think you need to open your PPT.
Yes, it's open for me, but let me start over. Let me see how to do this. Maybe I restart. PowerPoint.
When you share your screen, you can share us. You can share a single window, and that in that window you can show your PPT.
Yes, maybe that's the best way to do it.
You select that
Okay.
window.
Yes. Okay, let's see now. Okay. Now, sharing screen and desktop. Okay, let's try this. All right, are you able to see now? Whoops, now I'm not able to change the slide. Is this visible?
See, your desktop is visible to us.
Desktop only.
Desktop only. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yeah. Now it is visible.
I see. Okay. I made a careful arrangement to make sure this would work, and then it didn't work. Okay. So, well, okay. It's going to have to be in this format. I'm sorry. So eco-semiotics. For eco-semiotics, environment has semiotic quality in different ways and levels. In human culture, environment can become meaningful in literary and artistic representations or through symbolization of animals or landscapes. So this is directly relevant to the Bhagavata Purana, the artistic, literary and artistic representations, but it's in two levels because it's also through language. And then we may ask, why focus on the Bhagavata Purana, to which I would suggest an essential point is not to think of the Bhagavata Purana as simply Indian sacred literature, which it certainly also is, but rather it is classical world literature, and as such, it is wisdom literature for the entire world. And of course, the Bhagavata in recent decades has been translated into many languages of the world, so it's becoming a literary presence worldwide. All right, so why the Bhagavata's semiotics and why eco-semiotics? of course, the Bhagavata is highly regarded throughout India, and I would suggest that it supports a deep remedial and corrective process or processes for all of humankind toward devotional eco-balance, as I would call it, and away from ego-based ruination. And so semiotics, which again is about signs and meaning, points to the thinking dimension, which connects to the neurological sphere of biological models of systems, where any chain of causality necessarily begins. And this chain of causality is itself rooted in motivation. And this motivation, according to Bhagavad Gita, is rooted broadly in desire and aversion. So in the Bhagavata Purana, nature is very much a focus, and particularly in the 10th skanda, there are many stories of Sri Krishna's adventures in what I would call the bucolic forests of Vraja Vrindavan, especially as a child and as a youth. However, the text as a whole frames the Krishna story in a context of devolving human capacity loss and moral decay, following the Kurukshetra war of the Mahabharata. And so it's anticipating an apocalyptic dystopia, not a utopia, but a dystopia at the end of the Kali age, characterized by natural disasters. And this is presented very much in the first skanda. It's introduced, and then the final, the 12th skanda, is again returning to the theme of the characteristics, the signs of this current age of Kali. A little about the structure of the Bhagavata. The outer frame is Sutta. Sutta Goswami is narrating the Bhagavata Purana to sages in the beginning of Kali Yuga. And these sages are attempting to perform a yajna, and they are not able to keep the fires lit. And so they resort to narration of the Bhagavata Purana. Then, within that frame, we have Shuka narrating the Bhagavata to King Parikshit, and I'll say a bit more about that later. And then within his narrative, we have the account of Krishna Lila in Braja. So the failing fires, and also an account of the earth cow being abused by the disguised Kali in the first skanda, is narrated by Sutta. And then Shuka, in most of the Bhagavatam, Shuka is speaking from the second canto on, the second skanda. And in the fourth skanda in particular, he's again returning to the representation of earth as cow. And in this case, it's interesting that the cow is withholding the goods of the earth until threatened by the king, King Prithu. And then she, the earth cow, yields her milk to Prithu and all of the other persons and sorts of beings of the earth. And then, again, Shuka narrates Krishna Lila in Vraja, especially in the beginning of the 10th skanda. There are a number of nature-related signs in the Bhagavata Purana, and I'm just touching on a few of them here, all related to nature. In the first skanda, the encounter of king and sage, representing Dharma, in opposition to Kali, who is representing Adharma. But Dharma and Adharma, it's a kind of carryover from the Mahabharata, the theme that the effort to establish Dharma is becoming more and more difficult as time passes. And so then as Kali appears representing Adharma, then the Kali age unfolds in the course of the Bhagavata Purana. And then we have different animals, again, cow and bull representing earth and Dharma, the snake in particular representing fate and death, but also leading to devotional perfection, bhakti. Considerable significance is there for fire, depending, is it contained or is it uncontained, and also water, which can be both destructive and regenerative. And then we have features of the world, natural features, ocean, mountain, trees, and these are all, again, sources of generation and regeneration. And in particular, there are forests. And there won't be a whole lot of time to explain this, but forests are places both of danger and of shelter. So again, the king, King Parikshit, is representing dharmic leadership in opposition to Kali, who is embodiment of adharma. Being in opposition to dharma, the dharmic order he's conceived, which is conceived as cosmic or natural order. Then again, there's the cow and the bull, personifications of earth and dharma. And what Kali does in the narrative of the first skanda is to damage 3 of the bull's 4 legs. These are austerity, purity, and compassion, such that the bull is left standing on 1 leg only, the leg of truthfulness. And this is also rapidly deteriorating. The whole idea, the whole frame of the Bhagavata Purana, a major concern of the Bhagavata, is to exclude what it calls kaitava dharma, or deceitful dharma. And Kali, in particular, is representing deceitful dharma. In contrast to Parikshit is the sage Shuka, who represents perfected harmony with nature, or we may say a kind of medium between the human and the natural. Sage Shuka is detachment personified. His detachment is complete. He is identified as Atma Rama. And yet, and this is important in the Bhagavatam, he is attracted to bhakti, toward Hari, to nature's source. Significantly, he is Digambara, he is clothed by the directions, and this also indicates his communion with nature. He is a personification of the opposite of Kamadeva, by virtue of his absolute detachment. So yes, a little more about forests. For Maharishi Parikshit, The forest is a place of frustrated desire and thirst. Later in the 5th skanda is the story of Bharata. We don't have time to go into his story, but for him it is a place of distraction where he's attempting to practice yoga meditation, but he allows himself to become distracted. For Ajamila, in the beginning of the 6th skanda, the forest is a place of fall down from Brahmanical behavior, in which he encounters a nameless, low-class, possibly an outcast woman representing wild, untamed passion. And she, in turn, represents nature as illusion, or a manifestation of Maya, the magic or illusion perpetuating bondage in samsara. In general, the Bhagavata represents women as a danger, and they are thereby associated with wild nature. But this is, importantly, there are exceptions to this. There are Queen Kunti, Queen Devahuti, and most especially the Vrajagopis in the 10th book. Vrindavan forest then is a place of ultimate shelter, and it's a place where the semiology significantly shifts. The elements and other signs of nature become the perfect stage for the enactment of bhakti, and where, for example, a snake, a multi-headed snake, Kaliya, who has a name and has wives, facilitate Sri Krishna's play. And his play in this particular Leela is the elimination of pollution from the Yamuna River and the immediate environments of the Yamuna. So, continuing on this point of the 10th skanda having a radically different semiology of nature from the 1st through 9th and the 11th through 12th skandhas, there is a shift in binaries from dharma versus adharma to Krishna and his devotees versus assorted so-called demons, asuras, who are often appearing in monster-like animal forms. Nature as a subject of devotion and therefore a source of love. Nature becomes a backdrop or a background for the dramatic stage of rasa, especially prema rasa, or as a playground. Nature becomes a playground, an aesthetic enhancement for the enactment of Krishna's sports, and for the display of reciprocal devotional sentiments between Krishna and his devotees. So Vraja, or Vrindavan, may be described as not natural so much as supernatural, where everything functions under Krishna's supervision. And I'm sort of playing on that word, taking the literal meaning, actually. More directly, this play is happening under the direction of Yoga Maya, where Vraja is characterized by rustic abundance, cosmic functions, flora and fauna are exhibiting aesthetically pleasing harmony, especially at the time of Krishna's Avirbhava, his appearance. In Vraja, nature is super real because of its constant proximity to Krishna as the absolute real Satchit Ananda Vigraha. nature is under the supervision of Yoga Maya, as I mentioned, whereas ordinary nature outside Vraja is under the supervision of Mahamaya, the illusion-generating, illusion-perpetuating feature of divine power. Yoga Maya is Krishna's artful and wondrous instrument for securing connections, yoga, between himself and his devotees. Going back to the other side of nature, outside of Vraja, the general theme is that the Bhagavata, as a didactic work, aims to include a pointed challenge to the human assumption that nature is to be or can be dominated and exploited for selfish purposes. And as I've been discussing, there are so many semiotic signs for this, various elements, classes of flora and fauna, and land features. The Bhagavata presents an implicit dividing line between wild nature and tame nature. Attempts to tame or domesticate nature, even with the best dharmic intentions, may temporarily succeed, but wild nature is ever threatening to teach an essential lesson for human beings. Bhakti inverts the signs and meanings, particularly in the 10th skanda, such that nature is an active participant in devotional exchange. For example, a mountain becomes an umbrella for Krishna and his friends. A multi-headed snake becomes a stage for Krishna's dancing. A whirlwind becomes an opportunity for baby Krishna to fly about, and cows and bulls become expansions of Krishna. The theme of nature's devotionally reciprocal bounty in the 10th canto is highlighted there. Within the context of nature as oppositional, second of two main categories of nature in Vraja, the story of Govardhan is especially important to highlight nature's bounty. And there are three aspects of this Leela which are to be noted. First, there's the initial festival as a feast of bounty offered to Govardhan, which Krishna identifies himself with. Thus, Krishna identifies himself with the bountiful embodiment of nature, and bountiful nature becomes a form of the divinity, a form that receives human sacrificial, that is, vegetarian offerings of nature's products as food. Second, Krishna positions himself when the deluge begins between the destructive forces of nature and the Vraja residents, hence as the protector of his devotees against the onslaughts of any adversarial forces manifest in nature. And thus he both separates and joins together two aspects of earth, its sustaining supportive features, the earth as a whole, and its protective feature, the hill functioning as an umbrella. Third, the Leela concludes with a celebratory display of cosmic plenitude in the form of a royal consecration. Trees flow with honey, plants become ripe without cultivation, mountains bear jewels forth to their surface, all animals become non-inimical. It is the realm of eternal possibility. And so Govardhan, this hill or this mountain, can be understood as an embodiment of bhakti. Familiar nature is transformed into unfamiliar nature in Govardhan Leela, and this Leela contributes substantially to the Bhagavata's overall picture of nature in relation to bhakti and dharma. And I won't read the Sanskrit here, but the translation, alas, friends, this mountain is the best servant of Hari. Touched by the feet of Balaram and Krishna, he is jubilant. He offers respects to the Lord by providing drinking water, soft grass, fruits, flowers, vegetables, and caves to them, along with their calves, cows, and friends. I'm going a bit over time, so making it quick. The Bhagavata's narrative representations of nature may contribute to environmental protection discourse. Holism, as a fuzzy concept, can gain some specificity. The Bhagavata's narrative representations of nature are best understood in the context of the wider discourse on the relationship between Dharma and Bhakti. The Bhagavata argues that Dharma, both individual and cosmic, can be effectively pursued only in the light of the deeper principle of Bhakti, specifically in relation to Krishna. And the text offers a panentheistic perspective reaching beyond abstract theologizing on effective environmental protection. And finally, the Bhagavata advances two challenges to the present-day world. It offers a case for the protection of animals rather than consumption of them, and it urges Krishna bhaktas to protect the land of Raja specifically and the world as a whole generally as a place of divine presence. And I will end there and say thank you all very much indeed.
Have we lost connectivity?
I have finished my talks,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yeah. So, uh, Dr. Kenneth Valpe, we are extremely grateful to you for introducing a new dimension to studying the Hindu scriptures. So, so they are not just merely religious scriptures, but they are scriptures of scriptures which encourage the human mind to be very much closer to nature, to protect nature, to nurture nature, to look after the nature. And so I'm extremely, on behalf of Center for Hindu Philosophical Studies, University of Mumbai, I'm extremely grateful to you for delivering this talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ravikant sir?
Yes, Madhvi madam.
Yes. So,
We are waiting for His Holiness Radhana Swami Maharaj. Am I right?
okay. Yes.
There is someone joining the Science of Soul. So can we find out whether it is the
Science of Soul?
yeah?
Sir, now that name is not there in the list participant.
Okay, we'll wait. I'll find out.
Is there a video that is being sent, is it?
Yes, Madhvi madam, you can start introduction, and once your introduction is finished, we'll have Radhanath Maharaj video lecture.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, you
So,
introduce.
yeah, friends, after a very engaging lecture, I think we'll be more engaged with this while hearing the speech of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. Radhanath Swami is one of today's most beloved and respected spiritual masters. He is serving currently as one of the governing body commission members of ISKCON. In his teenage years, the longing for knowledge about God led Radhanath Swami to spend his youth wandering through disparate countries and cultures, yearning for an experience of truth. This journey ultimately led him to India, where Radhanath Swami lived for several years, met Srila Prabhupada, and accepted him as his spiritual master. Radhanath Swami has documented the details of his travels in his autobiography, The, the Journey Home. Another book written by him is The Journey Within. Both of these books are New York Times best-selling books. He is not only a guide but a community builder, and his dedicated efforts in congregation preaching developed the Sri Sri Radha Gopinath Mandir at Chowpatty, Mumbai, and various other preaching programs, including Pune, Kolhapur, Nasik, Nigdi, and other places. Each year, Radhanath Swami takes thousands of devotees on pilgrimage to holy places of the Vaishnava tradition. Radhanath Swami has served as a visionary, founder, and guide for a number of important projects. These projects bring the wisdom and compassion of the Bhakti Yoga tradition to millions around the world. Some of these projects include the United Nations award-winning Govardhan Eco Village project, the Bhakti Vedanta Hospital project, a school, an orphanage, and the Annamrita project that feeds more than 1.2 million children in India every single day. In spite of his many responsibilities, he also travels widely, teaching spirituality throughout Europe, Asia, and America. He has been featured as a guest speaker in many universities and in corporations. So we have got such a spiritual master with us to guide us for our future endeavor. So over to Ravikant sir for further proceedings.
little Prahlad was 5 years old. He was the son of a king, and he taught his classmates, who were all 4 or 5 years old, Komara acharit pragyo dharman bhagavataniha dulabam manasanjanma tad apyatruvam artadam. That this understanding, this knowledge of who we are, what is our relationship with nature and with all living beings, how we're all interconnected through the grace of the Supreme. This knowledge, it needs to be inculcated at the very beginning of life, at the very beginning of education. It is so important. Education, like money, like fame, like skills, like academic intellect, they're all could have a beneficial or destructive effect on the world and ultimately ourselves, or they either beneficial or destructive according to our values. An example is a knife in the hands of a thief will kill somebody to steal for one selfish purpose. And that same knife in the hands of a surgeon will save someone's life. So is the knife good or bad? It depends on who's holding it. So similarly, education could be greatly valuable, but what makes it so beneficial to the world is the values, the character of the people who have that education. Even religion itself, the same words of the same scripture, and we see this has happened through all the different religions in the world. The same words can be used to incite hate and bigotry and arrogance, or can be explained in such a way to create love and kindness and compassion and humility. So education, it's so very important. Sometimes it is said that moral, ethical, spiritual values, and I'm not talking about sectarian spiritual values, I'm talking about universal principles, that these things are confined to what one should learn at home. But in the educational institutions, we're just teaching the various technologies of learning. But actually, a teacher, a principal or dean of a college, they're leaders. And the example they set and the values that are inculcated, the ethics, the principles, unless that's part of the education, then we're actually doing harm to the students, because they can use the very thing that they're learning to hurt themselves, to hurt their families, and to hurt the world. So along with the tools, there should be a education aspect which teaches people how compassion is actually the culture of greatness. Not how much we accumulate, but the quality of our compassion is actually the characteristics of a successful great person. Well, another thing, Juhi, is, in the system that's often in India and in the world today, there's so much competition that creates depression and inferiority feelings. And, suicide among students is a serious problem in the world. because there's such a competitive attitude that's promoted, of you're good if you accomplish in this particular way from a quantitative perspective. But not everybody is the same equipped. It's not just a matter of how hard we try. We all have our own unique and special gifts in life. And the greatness of education should really give people encouragement and value that if I'm trying my best, it's not a matter of the quantity of the results that makes me successful. It's the sincerity of our intent. We're so much conditioned to compare ourselves to others. And the problem with that is if we do better than others, then we feel arrogant and sometimes even condescending. And if we're not as good as others, we can feel very depressed and sad. And we should all recognize and appreciate what each other can do and be our best. And the competition should be inspiring us to do better. It should not depress us into a false expectation of what we really can't do. If we leave along with whatever else we may have, if we leave an example of values, a legacy of spiritual purpose, compassionate purpose, then we're really giving our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, we're giving the world something very great. And that's truly a successful life, to leave behind an example that brings people closer to God, to nature, and to each other. Even as a country, Juhi, India's greatness in the world has always been the sages, the rishis, the yogis, the encyclopedic scriptures which teach Ayurveda and so many various types of science in the Sanskrit language. There's mathematics, there's astronomy and astrology, there's agriculture, there's social organization, and there's also, it's all connected with the philosophy of living in harmony with our soul and with God. And this has always been the greatness of India. And through the most ancient times, people from all over the world have come to India seeking spiritual enrichment. My beloved Guru, Srila Prabhupada, he left Vrindavan in India at the age of 70 and came to the West. And when he came back to India after having so many projects and so many followers and so many publication of Vedic literatures, he would tell the common people of India, common people, the leaders of India, that I'm just one person who went with nothing, but I carry this great culture, this great legacy of devotion, of connection to the soul and God. And look what I have done. It's the greatest responsibility, Bharata Bhumite Koila, for the people of India, along with engineering and science and medicine and business and industry, along with bringing these gifts to the world, the values, the character, the compassion, the wisdom of India should be there. And then the whole world could change in a very, very positive way. The idea of education, the root of that word, educare, which I believe is Latin, it doesn't mean to accumulate data and put it in your brain. Actual educare the meaning of education in its original form is to bring out what is already within us.
Yes.
And that's so very, very important. And the idea of yoga is to harmonize the body with the mind, with the heart, with the soul, to harmonize our very self with other living beings and with nature. And interestingly, the word religion comes from religio, which means to reconnect with what is within us, to reconnect. So yoga, religion, they're actually coming from the same source, to connect with our true self and live in harmony with the values that are inherent within us. The Bhagavad Gita tells, and Govardhan Eco Village is really based on this one verse of Bhagavad Gita. It's Bhoktaram Yadyatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suradam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Michyati. And essentially what this verse is saying is that the Supreme Being is the proprietor of everything that exists. That means nature is sacred property. Nothing really is ours. Ownership really means control. And essentially, we don't really have control over anything. You know, our wealth, if the economy changes, we could lose our wealth and it could be beyond our control. And ultimately, we grow old and we die and we can't take anything with us. So, you know, essentially everything, nothing is really our property. Everything is sacred, divine property. God is like the sun planet, and all of nature and everything is like the energy of the sunshine. And to respect that. And Suradam Sarva Bhutanam. Similarly, every living being is a child of the one supreme source. We're all factually brothers and sisters. And the Bible tells that the first and great commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. But to love your neighbor as yourself means unless we know ourself, we can't know how to love our neighbor. We actually have to learn how to love ourself, not with arrogance, not with selfishness, but to love oneself, because love is not selfish. Love is not arrogant. The more we know ourselves, the more humble we become, and the more courageous we become, and the more motivated we are to actually do wonderful things in this world, whatever our particular role is. Atapumbir dvijastreshtas varnashrama vibhagasha shwanushtatasya dharmasya samsadyad haritoshanam. That the real success of whatever we do and whatever role in society we may be is how we water the root of the tree, how we please God. And that pleasure comes through this principle, by understanding everything is sacred property entrusted in our care, and all living beings are God's sacred children who are to be respected and protected accordingly. So Govardhan Eco Village is a place where we have many ecological projects, water harvesting, because there's so much suicide and poverty due to drought. But if the science, the technology, which is very natural of harvesting water, can provide enough for our crops and for our family throughout the year. And we have a wonderful machine that our people created, which transforms plastic into usable oil without even the slightest trace of pollution in the atmosphere. And we have organic farming and many different projects like this. We have an animal sanctuary, a bird sanctuary, and we're trying to also create better and better a human sanctuary. And whatever skills we're learning and developing, we're going to the villages and teaching them. But along with teaching in this, we're trying to inculcate the very principle behind it, that to respect nature, to live in harmony with nature, to respect the sanctity of life in all of its forms. And we find, thousands, tens and thousands of farmers in the villages. They're economically, within their domestic relationships of family, as well as spiritually. There's so much prosperity just because they're given the tools that are required, both in the values and the skills. And we find that through this, universities and colleges from all over India and actually all over the world are coming to participate and do conferences, and the United Nations have taken interest. So a little effort, we're doing small, but we're trying to do the best we can actually affect the world. And that's our hope. We have a school for yoga. We have a school for Ayurveda. We have a school for environmentalism. We have a school for animal compassion. And we have a school for trying to live in harmony with each other. And that's
Yes.
and we invite everyone, please come and visit us and bless us. And when we build a house, whether it be a simple little hut, or whether it be a beautiful mansion or skyscraper, it's very important that we have a strong foundation. And what you're saying, Juhi, is so crucial for the world to hear, that oftentimes what goes in the name of progress is how we build the house, what type of luxurious furnitures, what type of architecture, but we cannot neglect the foundation. It's wonderful to build a great house, but we need to be attentive toward the foundation, because otherwise it's not sustainable. When a storm comes, and storms will come, it will collapse. So similarly, when we're building our economy, when we're building, our industries, whatever science, education, whatever fields we're developing, we have to be very much aware that we have a good foundation. And that foundation is the values, the character, and the spiritual understandings that we have of how actually everything and everyone in this universe is connected. It's not a belief. We are all connected. And if we don't respect each other, then we exploit. We live with negligence of what we're doing to the future. And this is just, so crucial for the world, is to understand this principle. I love to use a simple analogy, that this body we have, the human body, it's composed of so many various organs and limbs, and each one has a particular function, a particular color, a particular shape. There's the lungs, and the lungs cannot do what the heart does, and the heart cannot do what the kidneys do, and the kidneys cannot do what the brain does, and the brain cannot do what the little toe does. And the nature of a healthy body is every part of the body we're not competing with one another. The brain is not thinking, I am better than the pancreas. Every part of the body is working, serving to nourish every other part of the body. And if you injure your littlest toe, every single limb and organ of your body is sending positive blood to heal the little toe. So, different people have different social statuses. People have different roles of society, different natures, different colors of skin, different nationalities. Some are monks and some are billionaires. Everybody is unique. But what makes us healthy individually is to the extent we have a healthy social body, where we are all there for each other. We live in harmony with each other. And when we pollute the environment, the air or the water or the ground, we're actually causing harm to all living beings. So humanity is in its true and holistic, realistic way, is inseparable from living in harmony and respect for our environment and for all beings. And that's an education that's so much required. We will all benefit so much individually, collectively, if we open our minds and our hearts to see opportunities, in sunny, pleasant days and in very stormy days. Sometimes life, we're just so much in the stresses and the passions of just going through the routines we've been in. We don't really look around to see, what is the meaning and purpose of my life, and what's happening to the world, and what is it I really want in life, and what is it I want to give to my children in the world. But this is an opportunity to step back and to actually see. And sometimes we become discouraged because who am I? There's so many billions of people in the world and everything is going in such a direction. Who am I to make a difference? But actually, each and every one of us can make a historical difference by just living with integrity and compassion, living in harmony with God's grace the best we can. There's the beautiful story of Hanuman, who was lifting huge mountains to build a bridge across the ocean. And there was a little squirrel who was just, little pebbles he was pushing on. And Lord Rama, he told Hanuman that squirrel is doing exactly as much as you are, because that squirrel is doing the best she can, and you're doing the best you can. And the greatness of one's legacy is the sincerity and the integrity of our efforts, not the quantity. And what pleases God and what ultimately changes the world is that we're all just trying our best. Nothing is insignificant if it is done with sincerity and devotion. And compassion. It's actually the greatest thing. You were speaking about your Gurukul and Mahatma Gandhi's birthplace. The Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And that's where real fulfillment and meaning comes, when we're trying to be the change. We're sincere. We're trying to take guidance from people who inspire us. We're, satsang, we're taking guidance from holy people, from enlightened people, from like-minded people to make a change in the world. We have a sadhana, we have a time when we're putting some quality energy to reconnect with God and ourself within our heart through our spiritual practice. And then we live with this type of character, with this type of integrity. Seva. Seva means the joy that we find from being the change we want to see in the world through service. When we when we all respect and honor what each other can do without being envious or arrogant, then we actually find the real joy, the real peace, and the real love which is within us. And whenever I take shelter of the Supreme Beloved, that's where I find the greatest shelter. And that's where I can inspire others with the greatest shelter. And that's where real peace and that's where real happiness is. And that's beyond all the changes of this world and beyond death itself. And that's the opportunity that all of us have. That's Dharma. And that's the potential that is so beautiful. And oftentimes we get so distracted, we forget our potential. I remember my beloved teacher, Srila Prabhupada, when he went to England, he was challenged by some journalists. Why have you come to this country? We have our own religion. We have our own everything. Why have you come?
Mm.
And Srila Prabhupada smiled and said, actually, the British ruled over India for approximately 2 centuries. And so much of the wealth and treasures of India you brought to London, but you forgot the most valuable treasure of India. The most valuable treasure of India is the spiritual culture and values. So I have come to give freely to London what you forgot to take. So when we're locked down at home and and there's so much, stress and uncertainty, it's an opportunity to, in every way, try our very best to make things work well, but to take shelter of the wisdom, to take shelter through meditation and prayer, and especially chanting God's names, and to take shelter of people who inspire us, that can transform our lives. And thank you for being such an inspiration and such an example for all of us. And I'm a little Swami who really doesn't have anything except the enthusiasm to serve others. And you are such an accomplished person in your profession, in your career, and so loved and well known by others. And, together, if we just share the same enthusiasm, the passion for compassion, we could all, through our appreciation of one another and just sharing with each other, we could all do something beautiful for the world. Hare Krishna, and thank you so very, very much.
So this was a very engaging session with His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. And I am sure all of us might have forgotten the track of time also. We were so much immersed and involved in what he was speaking. His speech has given us good insights in the for running our Center for Hindu Philosophical Studies. So we should uphold the. This is the 75th anniversary of independence, and we should uphold the cultural, spiritual values, the ethical values, the morality which India has given to the entire world, and that is what he was saying. So I'm extremely thankful to Swamiji for his kind words and his thoughtful speech. With this, we end the plenary session, and on behalf of Center for Hindu Philosophical Studies, I thank Dr. Kenneth Valpe for his lecture on eco-semiotism. I also thank from the bottom of my heart His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj for giving us directions for the center to run and not forget that the values and culture which India has with her. We will be surely working on the same lines which he has said. So thank you one and all, and over to Professor Ravikant Sangupte, sir.
I think we should leave this room and go into the valedictory room by 8 o'clock, right?
Ma'am, for that we have to end this meeting and start the bilateral link.
I think now we will proceed for the valedictory, and for valedictory we have a different link, and most of all, yes, yes. So we'll stop this link and we'll join again.
Ma'am, for that we have to end this meeting and start the
Yes, new meeting. Yes, Rohit, we can do that.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Meeting. We are ending this meeting.